Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.
Arrests of convicted sex offenders crossing the border have risen by over 500% since last fiscal year. And in one border sector, they've increased by over 1,000%. NTD's Grace Coulter has the details.
Border Patrol agents have arrested 353 illegal immigrants with sex-related criminal convictions so far this fiscal year. Many of them had convictions for sex crimes involving a minor. That's a staggering 542% increase from this time last year, when agents apprehended 55 criminal sex offenders. And in 2019, 58 were arrested. Acting Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz said last week, "There isn't a day that goes by that I don't read a paper or a report from my agents that talks about criminal aliens, sexual offenders that they've apprehended out there." According to Customs and Border Protection, many of these criminals have already been deported, sometimes multiple times. Texas's Del Rio sector used to be a relatively quiet region for illegal border crossings, but now it's the second busiest. Sector Chief Austin Scarrow said last week the sector's seen a 1,400% increase in the number of sex offenders arrested by Border Patrol agents. According to Chief Ortiz, Border Patrol's detected more than 250,000 illegal immigrants who've evaded capture so far this year. Convicted criminals are the most likely group trying to avoid capture. They often do this by either crossing the border while agents are occupied or by crossing through private property. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has responded to the border crisis by directing the Texas Department of Public Safety to send extra law enforcement officers to the border. In the 3 months from March 4th through June 3rd, DPS has arrested nearly 1,500 criminals. On June 16th, Abbott announced Texas will build its own border wall. He posted this video to Twitter on Monday, saying they've begun building the border barrier. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Beijing residents won't be allowed to open their windows and must keep their curtains drawn on Thursday. That's the day the Chinese Communist Party will celebrate its 100-year anniversary, and authorities don't want anything to go wrong. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
The Chinese regime is welding every manhole cover in Tiananmen Square shut. That's to prepare for its 100th anniversary celebrations. U.S. broadcaster Voice of America says Beijing has entered an unprecedented state of tightened security control. Reuters says the Chinese regime secretively held a final rehearsal on Friday, ahead of the ceremonies to be held at Beijing's Bird Nest Stadium. CCP slogans blanket the streets, along with armed police officers and surveillance cameras. Roads to Tiananmen Square are blocked, with packs of police cars watching at every intersection. Residents nearby told Reuters that people living in Beijing's central Dongqing district are undergoing a detailed household registration inspection. Police go from door to door, confirming who lives there. And police say this is just normal inspections. Residents living in the so-called key sections are required to follow special rules. For 24 hours on the CCP's anniversary, they have to close all adjacent windows and draw all curtains. There's no peeking and no photos and no guests allowed and no charging for their electric vehicles. A man set fire right in front of the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing on Monday. An online video captured the event. It happened just 2 days before the CCP's 100th anniversary on July 1st. In the video, the man first set fire on the right side of the entrance. While security guards put out the fire with an extinguisher, the man went to set the left side on fire again and accidentally ignited his pants. Security guards eventually put out the fire and took the man from the scene. He appeared to be shouting, but it was inaudible in the video. There have been no official reports of the incident. The CCP will celebrate its 100th anniversary this week, but authorities still seem uneasy.
Teaching the ideas of systemic racism and sexism is now illegal in New Hampshire. That comes after a 2-year budget bill is voted into law in the state. Here are the details.
New Hampshire is leveling a new ban on teaching the idea that members of a certain race or sex are inherently racist or sexist. Governor Chris Sununu signed the 2-year bill into law last Friday, calling it a win for every citizen and family in this state. That's after the state's legislature voted to pass the measure, part of a $13.5 billion budget bill. The law includes the former House Bill 544, which outlines a ban on divisive concepts related to sex and race in state-funded programs and contracts. The text of the law reads, "Nothing in this chapter shall be construed to prohibit discussing, as part of a larger course of academic instruction, the divisive concepts in an objective manner and without endorsement." The law still seeks to uphold the principles of academic freedom and freedom of speech. It allows teachers, government agencies, and contractors to objectively present these concepts and promote racial, cultural, or ethnic diversity. The package also contains an education freedom account program, allowing families to use state aid for private and home schooling. The new law is largely modeled after former President Trump's now revoked executive order. That order prohibits promoting individuals as inherently oppressive due to their race or gender, or any other form of racial or gender stereotyping or scapegoating. According to an online survey published last week by Harvard University and the Harris Poll, about 2/3 of Americans believe that schools should not teach children that the United States is a structurally racist nation dominated by white supremacy.
And the U.S. Secretary of Energy traveled to New York City to promote the Democrats' infrastructure bill and especially its clean energy projects. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story.
Are you annoyed by some of the loud cars here in New York City? Well, a charging super hub for electric vehicles just opened here in Brooklyn. The US Secretary of Energy cut the ribbon and attended more events promoting clean energy projects related to the federal infrastructure bill. Brooklyn-based company Revel built the super hub. It's the largest one of its kind in the Americas. The company plans to adopt more of these hubs throughout New York City. They say charging electric vehicles in the city is hard, which is why electric cars aren't being used much. Their super hub will be free for the public to use for a week. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm says clean energy projects like this one will create jobs and boost the economy.
These are massive numbers of jobs, millions and millions, good-paying jobs. It's the kind of jobs that we need to keep our economy going.
She added that the US lags behind other countries when it comes to investing in clean energy.
China's investing lots in research and development. We as a country have fallen behind. So if we want to compete and win, not just China, but against any of our economic competitors, we've got to invest.
Despite higher investment, research by the Rhodium Group finds China's greenhouse emissions over the past 3 decades more than tripled. It says in 2019, for the first time ever, China's annual emissions exceeded those of all developed countries combined. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
House Republicans are launching an investigation into the origins of the CCP virus. They collaborated with expert scientists at their first hearing, working to uncover the truth about the virus and hold the Chinese regime accountable for its cover-up and malpractices. NTD's Melina Weisskopf was at that hearing, and she joins us from Capitol Hill.
In the absence of a full investigation into the origins of the CCP virus that could be led by congressional Democrats here on Capitol Hill, a group of Republican lawmakers created a select committee to continue investigations into the origin of the virus and how the CCP has continued to deceive the world about the virus. They're looking into questions like, why did the CCP cover up the early cases back in October and November of 2019? Why did they cover up the human-to-human transmission? How long has the CCP had such a strong influence, strong enough to censor crucial organizations like the World Health Organization and even American government officials?
The idea that our own government, i.e. Dr. Fauci, wasn't being square with us from the get-go, I think is wrong as well. And so we have to deal with all those things. And step one is to make sure the American people get the truth and know exactly what was going on and what people in our government knew right at the start. And people who were in the know, I think, right from the beginning, like Dr. Fauci, they didn't want to come testify.
Representative Mark Green tells us that the CCP has even gone so far as to threaten U.S. lawmakers, threatening to sanction those who speak out against the Chinese regime.
Well, the threat is that they're more concerned about their own reputation So they're covering up the fact that there was human-to-human transmission. It's almost, the more you push, the more recalcitrant they get. But we have an obligation to push on this one.
And Representative Green says that it's important for people around the world and even Chinese citizens living under the regime to be clear-eyed about the threat that the CCP poses. And Representative Nunes used the opportunity to call out the media for acting as a, quote, mouthpiece for propaganda.
A year ago, the media labeled President Trump and Republicans as racist, xenophobes for suggesting the virus was not zoonotic, but was the result of a lab leak.
There was a lot of back and forth discussion about if the virus did come from the Wuhan lab, if it was intentionally leaked by the government. One scientist said he does think that it was an accident, but even if it was an accident, he says it's no doubt that the CCP used it as a way to accelerate their agenda to become a global superpower. They say that next month they're going to release a new updated research paper from all the new information they've collected about the origins of the virus. But for now, they're going to continue their investigations on this topic because they say it's important to get the truth out there and hold the CCP accountable. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Many parents in Washington state are upset about the mandatory comprehensive sexual education program. They feel that the material is inappropriate for how they want to raise their children. NTD's Jason Perry spoke with a concerned parent to find out more.
When most people hear the phrase comprehensive sexual education, they may think of learning about the human anatomy, how to prevent pregnancy and sexual transmitted diseases, and so on. But there is a lot more included in the comprehensive sexual education curriculum that is mandated throughout Washington state. Concerned parent Brigida Millen began homeschooling her children after the bill was passed. She tells NTD what is actually being taught.
So they're teaching things like how children need to touch themselves for pleasure, taking baths together. They actually have pictures in some of the curriculum for 6th grade, pictures of positions where they can do things to themselves and where they can do things with each other, which is just mind-blowing.
The curriculum also includes teaching children about gender identity and sexual orientation. Also, there is role-playing, and students are randomly selected to see what it's like when two people are communicating about sex.
Whether it's, a homosexual scenario or a heterosexual scenario, the fact that these children are being forced to role-play with each other and then being told that if they're uncomfortable that they have some kind of problem is absolutely crazy.
The curriculum states if two boys are randomly assigned to each other and if one of them feels uncomfortable, the teacher should say the boy's response is homophobic. Although the Washington state law mandated the curriculum, residents were able to gather over 250,000 signatures and got Referendum 90 on the ballot last year to try to veto the mandate.
Well, Referendum 90 unfortunately failed because in our voters' pamphlet, they did not explain anything that was in the curriculum. It's been very hard to get the curriculum out because we've been threatened copyright lawsuits and all kinds of things.
She encourages people to look for themselves and visit informedparentsofwashington.com to see what is actually in the comprehensive sex ed curriculum. NTD reached out to the Washington Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and they said there is no requirement in Washington to provide sexual health content to students in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Jason Perry, NTD News.
So should American elementary schools teach that their country is structurally racist, dominated by white supremacy? Most Americans turned that idea down in a Harvard survey. The question was, do you believe that kids in elementary school should be taught that America is structurally racist and is dominated by white supremacy, or should they not be taught this? Just over 60% said this should not be taught. That's nearly 2/3. The other 39% said it should. Over 2,000 registered voters participated in this study. It echoes a previous poll in which 60% of Americans said they had an unfavorable view of critical race theory. That was a YouGov Economist poll done earlier this month.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us.